all those rock and roll weirdos, the people that used to make life so much fun. Sex and drugs and rock and roll. It'd be nice to, hang on. This looks interesting.
1, 2, 3, 4. Rock and roll weirdos, rock and roll weirdos, rock and roll weirdos.
Welcome to episode 6 of Rock and Roll Weirdos.
Featuring. Am I allowed to say featuring? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Lindsey Anderson of Kitty and the Kowalskis, Kitty Kowalski's, Killer Kowalskis.
Woo!
All of the above.
All of the above. Also, I just read an article about, I never knew this, that there was a wrestler named Killer Kowalski. And
yes.
You guys legally had to change your freaking band name. Like, what?
Yes, that is really, that's a story in of itself. But we were called Killer Kowalski. And what I didn't realize is it's like, you have the band meeting,
Yeah.
and everyone comes with their little list of band names, and most of them are horrible, like Kebble Soup. And you're like, no. I actually have one that's based on a gift that someone gave me. I have a trash can with Madonna on it, and I wanted the band to be called the Madonna Trash Can because it sounds good, right? It sounds like a band name, and it's a real thing. Our drummer at the time, Moondoggy, who we used to play with like Vacant Lot and a bunch of other bands. I think he's one of the many rotating drummers of the Queers. He's from New Hampshire.
Love it.
All that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He came with Killer Kowalski, like the wrestler. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, man. Killer Kowalski. It sounds great, right?
Yeah.
And so that was great. You don't think anything of it. And we recorded, the demo tape. We recorded 4 songs with a guy called Peter J, who's a great, producer, musician, writer, whatever. I think he was in Warrior Soul. But he had a great place in Brooklyn, a studio in Brooklyn, and painted on the side was a scene from like Where the Wild Things Are. It was kind of crazy.
What?
So
That's awesome.
We recorded this, 4-song demo to ADAT there, and then of course sent it around, and some record label actually picked it up, and it was a punk label, but it was distributed by MCA. So we went to a big building up on Broadway or whatever. They said they would put out a 7-inch.
Wow.
And, it's kind of a precursor to doing an album. I worked at an advertising agency, so you have graphic artists galore who would rather work on anything than what they're paid to do. So a good friend of mine, Dr. Dave Shee, he put together the artwork. I think Sandy Lieb did the photo. There's a picture of like women wrestling on the front, and he made it look like it was on like an old TV.
That's cool.
It was all like pixelated and stuff.
Yeah.
So we put that out, and then, it's like you get a record out. You're like, oh, now, I've hit the big time. So, we used to every weekend go and tour and play shows. It was constant. We used to play at least 1 or 2 shows, a week, or maybe at least 3, 4 shows a month, something like that.
Okay.
And we're booked to play Boston at the Rathskeller, really famous punk rock venue, really great place. All ages shows, the whole shebang.
Love it.
So we're playing up there, and the guy from the venue calls me up, and he's like freaking out. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I just got a cease and desist letter from wrestler Killer Kowalski. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is like the mid-90s. So
yeah.
I was like, you got to send me that. So he faxes it to me.
Oh my God.
I have a fax of this letter saying, I've been in the entertainment industry for 30 years, and it's from like this theatrical agency. And the guy's name is like Abe, he's like this old theatrical agent. I'm picturing like Broadway Danny Rose or something here. And I call him up, and I'm like, hey, I just got this letter. We're like a punk rock band, and we're playing an all ages show at the Rathskeller. I have little doubt that anyone's going to confuse us.
Yeah.
For the artist, I'll say, that you represent. So Killer Kowalski was running a wrestling school in the Boston area.
What are the odds? What?
Yes. And so, which is really kind of crazy, but pro wrestling at this time is huge, right?
Yeah.
in the mid 90s, it kind of started ramping up in the late 80s with like Hulk Hogan and people like that and whatever. I mean, but it was just, starting to get to be big business now. And so he was teaching people how to do his style of wrestling. And so this guy, Abe, Abe Ford from the Ford Theatrical Agency. God, I can't remember, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. I can remember this stuff. And he's like, killer's name is Walter or Waldek. He really was Polish, Waldek Kowalski. And they call him Walter. He's like, oh, Walter's a reasonable guy. Maybe you can call him up and talk to him.
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
And he gives me Killer Kowalski's home phone number.
Oh, my God.
And I am just like, oh, God, this is the stuff you do when you're in a band. And I'm like, business lady, geez. So I'm sitting there at work and I pick up my phone and I dial it. And I didn't get him the first time. I got his answering machine, which was like, go ahead. Do your worst after the tone. And I'm like, like, what do you say after that? I was like, hi, my name is Lindsey Anderson. I have this band called Killer Kowalski. I talked to Abe Ford. He said I should talk to you. We're a band and we're really big fans of yours. But I wanted to talk to you about using the name and, left my number, whatever. He calls me back. And his greatest fear was that people were going to show up and expecting to see him making a personal appearance. And they would be disappointed because, here's this crappy punk rock band. I was like, okay, I understand this. Like, we're both in the entertainment field or whatever.
Were you just like, why don't you just come to the show?
I'm not that smart. I think you're giving me a laugh at it. Like, you're much more clever than I am. So we had a nice chat and he was pretty cool. He was just like, yeah, I just don't want you like using my name. And I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So we changed it to the Kowalskis. Now, fast forward where we make a record for this record label called Blackout that was part of MCA. And then they got acquired by, I want to call it Koch Records because, Mayor Koch. But so Blackout sends the masters over there. And that record label had the band The Amazing Royal Crowns. And The Amazing Royal Crowns, they were kind of like a Scottish band.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Put out albums, like I knew who they were, got a cease and desist from the Royal Crown Review saying that the name was too close. So they changed their name to The Amazing Crowns. And the next album they put out, they got sued by the Royal Crown Review because it was too close. And I was like, you gotta be shitting me, right? You would never confuse the two bands. They were doing two different things. I mean, whatever. But, so what happens was we're negotiating for trying to figure out when they're going to release our record. And the head of the legal department goes, you can't be the Kowalskis. I'm like, why not? They said, because it's too close to Killer Kowalski. We've already been through this with the Amazing Crowns going to the Amazing Royal Crowns going to the Amazing Crowns and getting sued by Royal Crown Review. They were like, it's too close. You have to come up with a different name. And I said to the head of their legal department, and this is just like my chutzpah, whatever. I was like, I am going to get a letter from Killer Kowalski himself saying we are allowed to be the Kowalskis. If I present to you a signed letter saying that he is satisfied with the name change and it doesn't infringe upon his trade name, can we still be the Kowalskis? He's like, if you get a letter from him, yeah, fine. That's exactly what I did. Because I had his phone
He was
number.
cool with it?
Yes. So I basically wrote up I talked to him. I'm like, are you satisfied with the name change? The Kowalskis. I mean, the Kowalski is the most common name in Poland.
It's like imagine we called the Smiths and then someone come and tries to sue you.
Or Anderson. And if anyone was like, why did you change your last name to Kowalski? Like, oh God, Lindsey Anderson, Whitey McWhiteburger, geez, like, what does that mean? So anyway, just like there's no ethnicity there at all, and when people are like, oh well, so what are you? I'm like, I'm American. No, really, what is your family? I'm like, no, I'm American. Yeah, but I'm like, okay, my father's family founded the state of Rhode Island, and my mother's family, her uncle, 8 generations back, wrote the Star Spangled Banner. I'm really, really, really American. Like, I'm not ethnic in the slightest. So I made it so easy for him. I sent him a FedEx letter. In there was like a prepaid FedEx envelope. I wrote out the letter and I'm like, sign here. And I made 2 copies. I'm like, keep one for yourself and send one back to me, but I wanted 2 originals. And he sent it back to me and I walked in and I was like, here you go.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's amazing. Do you still talk to is he still with us, Killer Kowalski?
No, it's really sad. He died. Gorilla Monsoon died first. I think Gorilla Monsoon died in 1999 and Killer Kowalski died a few years afterwards. So then I was like, oh, can we be Killer Kowalski again?
You're like, name change.
I think our Facebook page says Killer Kowalski just because, I mean, it's such a good name. It's like Marilyn Monroe. So here's another part to this. What I didn't realize is in the background, it was Handsome Dick Manitoba that suggested to Doggy that we be called Killer Kowalski. So when I got this cease and desist letter, Manitoba heard about it and was like, I gave your band that name. I was like, no, I actually didn't.
That's amazing.
And so I gave him a copy of the cease and desist letter, and it was hanging up in Manitoba's the entire time.
That's amazing.
The entire existence of Manitoba's had that, like in the corner where Richard had his like wrestling memorabilia,
Yeah,
all
I remember
stuff, being
that
the
stuff.
handsomest man in rock and roll.
Yeah.
Like, I love that album where he's wearing his like wrestling like jumper and he's got his amazing afro. It's just fantastic.
That's so funny. Paul actually used to live like across, down the block.
Yeah, I was
from
on
Manitoba.
A between. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I was on 7th between.
A and B.
No, I was.
So A and B. If you're on 7th Street between A and B, that would be on the south side of Tompkins Square Park.
Yes, that's where he was.
Okay.
I was on the same side, the same block as the Vezak.
Niagara
Horseshoe.
7A. If you're on the
Oh.
south side of Tompkins Square Park,
I feel like
you
I
are
used to
on
like
7th
live.
Street.
I basically
Thanks.
lived
Yeah.
at Niagara for like probably from
Wow.
18 until probably like 25. So I know that area ridiculously well.
I feel like I have to thank you guys for reminding me where I used to live for a year.
I know. I feel like it's funny. Like I had someone doing this and it was so annoying. I used to be a partner, one of the owners of Coney Island High, right? Which is-
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up before we did because that was going to be my next thing.
right there on St. Mark's Place. And there
Love
was a guy, just whatever on the internet, something came up or whatever. And he was telling me what year my club closed. And I'm like, no, I can tell you because I was one of the few people who had a cell phone at this time, like in 1999. And I actually had one since 1994. Like when I first got this thing, it was like the Gordon Gecko phone. You know what I mean?
The big chunky one.
You could hammer nails with it.
Like, yeah, and it like had this giant flip out thing and this antenna you pulled
the
up.
antenna.
Oh my God. And it was like $59 a month plus $99 a minute, right?
$99 a
And-
minute.
Yeah. And we were so amazed at this thing that I remember sitting at like 3 of Cups or 7A or something with these friends I was playing in a band with at the time, this band called Starkiss. So I'm there with like Addie and Jenny and Sandy.
Jenny.
Yes,
Sorry,
Jenny
Jenny
Starr,
Decker.
right?
Jenny Rodeo
Jenny
Bar
Decker.
Jenny.
So
Love her.
she played drums for this band Starkiss, and we were just like so amazed by this device that we sat there at like 3 of Cups, like crank calling people, right?
That's the dream. I'm
Wow.
sorry. Like at
Because it
that
wasn't
time.
a landline and people couldn't
Yeah.
start behind us or anything.
Dying.
Remember Star 69? God, I'm really like dating myself. I feel like I'm like a granny, like back in those days.
We used to do it, but did you know the trick that you could press star 67 and that would block star 69?
Oh, again, I wasn't that clever.
Me and my brother, when we were young, we were like pro prank callers. Like that was what we did for entertainment.
It's so good.
It's the best.
So good.
I don't know if either of you grew up in the New York area.
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
So, public access cable.
Yes.
There was like the naked talk show, like interview show, where the guy would just interview people naked. And then there was the Robin Bird show, and she would always dance around in her crocheted bikini to Baby Let Me Bang Your Box. And then there was this show called the Crank Call Show. And it was two guys, and they're both sitting in a chair. Between them was like a little table with a phone with like multiple lines, and they would flash their number on the screen. Then people would crank call them.
Oh my God. I got to look this up. I wonder if there's still like remnants of it on the internet.
If anyone taped it or anything.
There has to be like, because I think the Crank Call Show existed into like the early to mid 80s, I think. Like, I think that I saw it as late as like, say, 1985. But these guys would just sit there and be like, hello. They would just like push the buttons, the light up buttons on those old tiny phones with multiple lines. And they would have like a squawk box like Charlie. And some guys were just like, you motherfucker, they'd be like, next. And then some people would actually like, use the medium for which it was intended and like do really good crank calls or jokes and stuff. And it was like 30 minutes of this, and it was hilarious.
That's amazing.
I almost feel like the Jerky Boys came out of this. Like it was just that kind of a thing,
That's amazing. I am literally like, after this, I am going to try and find remnants from this.
Yeah.
The Crank Call Show.
The Crank Call Show. Oh my gosh. Imagine if you can unearth some gems.
I'm really sad because, cell phones have really taken up, the fun out of.
I know.
I mean, crank calls were sheer joy, right?
Oh,
the
sheer
best.
Unadulterated bliss. You'd be rolling on the floor, like your eyes would be crying. Like sometimes you couldn't even get the words out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Prince Albert in a can, like that kind of stuff. And, is your refrigerator running?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff. It's just, I really feel bad that these kinds of entertainment now is actually, it's really passive, right? So looking at a screen, watching videos, watching TikTok, I mean, unless you're making these videos, it's all so passive. Whereas, I was talking to my nephew, and he's kind of bemoaning, well, like, oh, my generation, they're not very social and and social media, blah. And I'm like, I understand that. The only reason why I got laid when I was a teenager is because we were bored and we didn't have the internet.
Seriously.
I mean, we were horny teenagers. We didn't have porn,
Yeah.
We didn't even have VHS at the time, so.
I remember, like us and a group of friends, I think when we were like 15 or 16, we went to like a gas station and we wanted to buy like a Playboy or something, and like, man, we must have waited outside for about 45 minutes, psyching ourselves up who was going to go in and try and buy it. And then one of our friends just like really casually was like, okay, I'm going in. And then he like, picked up a couple of things, got a bag of potato chips, and then, oh, there we go, we'll grab a Playboy. But he was so calm and collected about it. I think the guy was like, how old are you? And I forget New Zealand how old you had to be, like 18 or something.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he's like, oh, I've just turned 18. And the guy, he was just like, okay, whatever. And then, but like we got this thing and we were just like, you know what I mean? It's like we had found the Holy Grail. We're just like flipping it, like 6-7 heads, like looking in this page and we're flipping it. We're like, oh my God. Like,
you know what? Because you guys earned that Playboy. Like you earned it.
Yeah.
You didn't, type in like horny milk sluts or whatever kids search on these days, whatever, Naughty librarians. I have no idea like what we're into, but like now you just type it in and just watch, right? So, but a lot of that stuff, it was like a struggle. Like, I feel your pain. Like it was a struggle. When you're describing you buying that Playboy, it reminds me of that scene in American Graffiti where the guy goes to buy condoms.
Yeah.
It's totally like, he's picking out a pack of guns,
Yes,
getting a
trying to be more
nail
cash.
clipper, and all that stuff, and he's got to make up some kind of story. Yeah, you fill up water, you throw them off the roof,
Your heart's racing,
Oh God, it's like all of that stuff. I think the anticipation, and psyching yourself up, like what you were describing, is
Yep.
so real. And we even had that with music, because even before fanzines, like, getting our hands on like these records that like we'd only heard about, or maybe we were reading about it in Cream magazine or something. You had to go to like a special record store and get these like imports, like go to the import section,
Yep.
And then when you found, it says rock and roll weirdos, when you found the other weird kids,
Yes.
in your high school that like were into this stuff. And, I remember by the time I was a senior high school, Whip It had been like a hit or whatever. And people knew that I was weird, but they didn't kind of really know what. So I'd have these jocks be like shouting out at me, "Hey, yo, Devo." Like anything was weird was Devo, Yo, Devo.
Oh my
God.
God.
Knucklehead. Anyway, and so when you found these kids, like I wound up sitting at the lunch table with like the foreign exchange students because you just didn't, whatever, fit in with, Muffy and Buffy and Biff and,
Biff. Oh
Chip,
my God.
stuff like that,
That's amazing. But you had no like-minded weirdos at your school?
There was this very small bunch. So, I grew up in Westchester County. So you have the proximity to the city.
Yep.
Where there's all this stuff going on, and it kind of like trickles into the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
Or you read, you get a copy of Enemy, or you get a copy of Trouser Press, so you get a copy of, Cream magazine, and you're reading it. Like I was reading about Iggy before I heard his music, and I was reading about Sex Pistols before I heard that music. And you're like, how do I get my hands on this stuff? Because you're a kid and you have no money.
Yep.
So I'd be like, Mom, can I have $5? They never give it to you. My dad be like, you gotta wax my car. You gotta clean out the oven.
That was my parents. They were like, all right, so what are you gonna do to earn it?
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, $5, that's one load of laundry. And I'm like, oh, really? That takes so long.
There was a definitely, will work for records deal going on there. There was this one record shop that was down by the train station, and you grow up, 30 minutes out of Manhattan, and you're, right by the commuter train, and it was called the Record Depot. Isn't that clever, But you could buy an album, for $4.44, right?
Wow.
So I'd go down there with my $5 and be like, oh my God, what am I gonna get, And some of it was actually like a packaging thing, like, do I buy the Heart record, which is like its own thing, like it's just a record in a sleeve, or geez, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, it's a gatefold, and it comes with 2 posters and 2 stickers.
Yeah.
And this is like how you're like, and even when my, allowance, weekly allowance for, this grueling slave labor, scrubbing and mopping the kitchen floor and cleaning the toilets and emptying all the trash cans and picking up the dog poop and waxing my dad's car, I'd get like 50 cents. But there was another record store I'd ride my bike to, and you could buy a 45 for like 59 cents or something like that.
That's awesome.
And sometimes I was like so generous, I'd buy my brother a record. So what did I buy him? Like some of his favorite songs, because he was like really little. Like that song, Popcorn by Hot Butter.
I don't
I've
know
never-
that one. Can you write that
It's
down
an
though?
instrument
Because
that
Yeah.
like if you grew up in New York,
Oh.
it was like they used it for like, the Channel 5 o'clock movie or whatever, like if you heard it, you'd be like, oh my God, that freaking song.
I think I just know it just when you hummed it for a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah. It made it to New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. So hot. Yeah. The international smash hit Popcorn. I bought him the theme from SWAT. He was really into like these, like, anything that had like a fire truck or something. So he was really into like emergency and like SWAT, so I bought him those records. And then I bought like for myself, like Calling Dr. Love and like Magic Man by Heart,
love it.
And here I am in the 5th grade. And that's when I picked up the guitar.
Love
My
that.
mom bought a guitar. She was taking guitar lessons at church.
Oh
No way,
my
your mum bought one.
God.
So she'd be sitting on the couch, with the guitar going, Michael, row your boat ashore, hallelujah. These kind of, I had a hammer,
She's like, oh, holy night.
Yeah. So she's singing all these songs are, my Waspy McWaspburger church. It's funny, my father was a real character. And I remember him once like holding a glass of wine being like, there's nothing worse than a convert. He just thought they were like insufferable because he's like, oh, now I have to hear about it. I think he was talking about a friend of his that had stopped drinking. And, again, this is back in like the 80s or 90s where it's just like, there's not the awareness, or the prevalence or the support. Like, thank God, people who have substance abuse problems or, alcohol problems. I was just, at a Thanksgiving dinner. No, we were actually doing a post-Thanksgiving potluck, like, hey, bring your leftovers and let's just all hang out. And we were having a conversation about AA, and they do great work. They've saved lives, but there's a lot of people who become sober or get sober and they start off in AA, but at a certain point, it doesn't work for them. It's either too gaudy, you know what I mean? Or it's too restrictive. It's too...
Why is there so much religion involved in that, though? I don't understand.
Well, it's the higher power. And this is the thing I guess I couldn't wrap my head around. It wasn't so much the religion, but it's that you're powerless. And I get it on a certain side. Is that as much as you think you can control your addiction, you can't. But the fact that you're powerless, it's like, well, I got the meeting schedule and I showed up and there
I'm here.
And it's funny because my friend who's been in the program for a while, he was like, have you ever struggled with substance abuse? And I said, I would have liked to, but I can't really commit to anything. No, but I'm joking. But I went through this spell where I think socially, and I'm trying to even get the timeline, but I can't even give you a timeline because the whole thing was a blur because I was doing drugs. But I went down this rabbit hole, I think, of cocaine from about, I don't know, maybe the end of 93 to like the end of 95 or 94. I don't remember. So it was a period of maybe about 18 months or 2 years where I kind of started like, oh, this is the weird thing. How it started was that I found a baggie of cocaine. And I'm like, oh, let's do this. Like, I mean, you wouldn't do that now because, fentanyl and stuff.
Exactly.
It's funny how, I feel like, and again, I'm going to date myself, but I feel like I turned 40 and I woke up and I opened the phone book and I couldn't read anything. So I'm like, shit, I need glasses, right? And then, I turned 40 and, speaking of Niagara Abbey, I'd be there doing shots of Cuervo with Jesse until 4:30 in the morning and be like, oh shit, I guess I better go home. I'd sleep a few hours and I'd be at my desk at like 9 o'clock.
Wait, was that when you worked for the ad agency for cigarettes? I remember when you told me that, you're like, I'm the devil. Like, You're like, I'm a bad person. I work in ad agencies for cigarettes. And I was like, that's awesome. Do you get free ones? I smoke cigarettes.
I did when we were prototyping the smokeless cigarette. And I had these, because it was a prototype, I'd have these blank white packs, and I'd pull out these cigarettes that didn't burn down, and I'd be able to smoke them inside. And it was such a conversation starter. People were like, what is that?
That's
and I'm like,
wild.
well, it's the smokeless cigarette, And it was absolutely fascinating. But yeah, you either got, oh, that's really cool because I got all this Joe Camel memorabilia, or I got, people just like, thinking I was the devil. I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand. I'm shoveling coal for Satan. Do you want to pay my rent?
No, but you know what? Like, I respect it. Like, you have always like kind of, even when doing your music stuff and everything, like had a good job and were like, like, is that how you managed to become a partner of Coney Island High?
Kind of, yeah. It was a combination of things. So, here's another thing. A guy I was dating who will, remain. I mentioned we met in college, and he's like, no one can know I went to college because it's not cool. If you're like a rock and roller, you went to college, that's like, yeah. Or, that's okay if you're like in Wilco, I guess, but, it's just not, that kind of thing. So, anyway, that was his deep, dark secret, but I actually have like an MBA from NYU. So I've always been kind of like a numbers dork, and I've always been like really, like there's a part of me that's like really OCD and anal, and like I'm just like this closet bean counter, and I love like that kind of crap. So now I work for like this international tax firm. So that's like, I get my, inner bean counter on, but I definitely have,
awesome.
that side of me. And yeah, so with the band, having this kind of brain was, we were just talking about before about how I saw, especially in the 90s or, whatever, when there were a lot of bands in the New York scene, getting record deals, and that's cool. It's great. For me, I see it like, hey, what's good for the scene is good for everybody, right? And there are some people who saw it like a pie, like there were only so many slices, and if that person got a bigger piece, that means they got a smaller piece, and I don't know, I can't think like that. I'm like, you're successful, that's freaking great, cool, man. So we were talking about someone saying, well, this particular artist is only doing well because, he knows people or he does this or whatever. And it's like, no, you need all of that, right? You need to, cultivate and network, and maintain relationships. Like people call it networking, but really like these relationships take time, right? You do need a publicist, because they're the only person who's going to give a crap. And if you pay them to give a crap, cool, man, maybe they'll get other people to give a crap for free, which is nice. And then, you got to book shows, and you got to rehearse, and you got to put stuff out, and you got to make artwork, and you've got to, do all this stuff, and it's really, really hard work. And you got to have all of those things. So they'll be like, oh, he's just friends with so-and-so, and that's why he's successful. No, it's all of it. It's all of it, right? And some bands divide that up. Like there's the guy that books the shows, and the guys that make the flyers, and then there's a guy who gets like, all the music production stuff done, and then there's the guy who's the schmoozer or whatever, but you have to do it all. It's all of it.
That's so true. Yeah, it's like not just one thing. It's like, and then you have those people that are like, someone gets an opportunity and then, oh, you're a sellout, you sold. I never understood that. Like,
I don't understand it either. So here's the difference, and especially like in the punk scene, when someone got popular, like, fuck Green Day got popular, or Rancid, or Blink-182, God bless them, a Bad Religion, like, they really slugged it out from like 1980. Come on. They deserve to get paid. So especially Green Day, I'm like, how can you call them a sellout when they've been playing the exact exact same music the entire time,
Yeah.
right? Now, if you want to talk sellout, and I pick this person as an example, and I'm not picking on her because I actually like her music, but let's talk about Liz Phair, right? She put out on Matador like this Exile in Gaiaphil, and it was like this concept album, and it was supposed to be like this answer back, to Exile on Main Street, and there were some really great songs in there, and people were like, holy crap, it was almost like the first time people heard Alanis Morissette, and they were like, holy crap, man. And she really had a voice, and it was amazing. I mean, I don't mean the singing voice, I just mean, she had something to say.
Yep.
And then the next time I saw or heard from her, she was freaking Britney Spears. She was wearing Lucky 7 jeans and a sparkly top, and whatever the 2000s version of Le Boutins were. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, that's a sellout. You know what I mean? She's not PJ Harvey. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So she started off like PJ Harvey, but she didn't wind up like PJ Harvey. And like I said, I don't want to use her, I have nothing against her, whatever. That's what she wants to do. Fine. But people calling Green Day a sellout is just stupidity because they've been playing the exact same music the entire time.
Yeah.
Just, that album, Dookie, it was like this zeitgeist album. It just caught everybody like this thing that people were feeling at the same time, and it was just great. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good. Even as when Dookie came out, wait, what year was that?
94?
Yes. So I was literally 9 years old, and I was obsessed. My older brother had it, and that's how I got into it. And I feel like that's definitely one of my like top 10 albums of all time for me.
It's pretty perfect.
The whole album, every song.
Same here.
The flow, it is.
I think that was one of the first albums I owned. I must have got that. I got the Blue album by Weezer, and I got Dookie by Green Day like around the same time. And I was I'm still obsessed with those albums.
Yeah.
But like Dookie, like I didn't even play the bass yet. And I was listening to that, and I heard the guitar and everything, and like I was not a musician, but I would listen to that and I'd hear the guitar, and I was just like, what is that other instrument? Like, and I just loved it, and I felt like it's funny, Mike Dirnt's bass, and like even to this day, Abby will still hear me. I'm walking around the apartment like playing basket case, and I'm like, oh, I just found the isolated bass like on YouTube, and I'm like, I wonder if I had it right, and then I'll listen. I'm like, oh man, he does these cool things. Like I totally missed it, and just like walking around like playing that is just like it's so fun, And I almost like can't believe that I can play it. I mean, it is almost like 30 years later, but
it's really fun for me too. Just like, being home in our 1-bedroom apartment with 3 cats and just hearing like a bass.
Because I walk around, but I'll go in the bathroom because it's got good acoustics. So every now and then I'll be playing it. Abby will be like, babe, I got to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get out. Like,
it almost sounds like a band name, Mike Dirnt's Bass.
Yeah. Mike Dirnt's Bass.
It's funny. There were so many like Fall Out Boy or whatever, Taking Back Sunday, all these bands that have 3 words. Aside from the Madonna trash can, I came to the table with a new concept band, and we should be like 3-word name.
Yeah.
There's always doesn't have a 3-word name. We should just call ourselves 3-word name. Now with my radio show, I'm always looking for new music. I'm always looking for something to be excited about. There's this great band out of the Midwest. It's 3 brothers called Radkey. And, they live in some godforsaken place like South Dakota or who knows, Montana or something. And it's like these 3 kids, and they make a ruckus, man. They're amazing. They're so good. I saw them live, and I'm like, everybody, like, you got to go see Radkey. You got to see. I'm excited about them. So yeah, but Green Day, God bless them. Like, I feel like their mom, whatever. It's like a generation, of course, behind me, but I'm so glad. Like, thank God it's them and not some other crap band. I mean, there's plenty of other crap bands that are popular, like Coldplay or Maroon 5 or some shit. But I mean, thank God, Green Day, they, deserve everything they got. One of the things that really, really, really bummed me out, like, this is just like, one of the most horrible things is that I somehow got, sucked into the Green Day universe. I feel like sometimes I'm like the Forrest Gump of punk rock. Like, I stumble into these things, Yeah, totally. Like, I totally stumble into these things. So I stumbled into like, the Green Day universe. And whatever. I like those guys, whatever. I was, close with their tour manager, we were just kind of hanging out, as boys and girls do. And, that was just kind of a thing. So I don't know what it was, but, all this shit was going down, like CBGBs was going down. That's when I moved to like Stockholm. So I'm living in Stockholm and people are writing to me like, you have to save CBGBs. And I'm like, oh my God, why is this on me, And I'm, trying to do some stuff. Okay. And this is really funny. I said, okay, if CBGBs isn't sustainable as a business anymore, Hilly was working with a guy I knew called Todd. He was in a band called the Radix. My ex-husband Kurt was in the Radix. They're a great band. They were also in LES Stitches together. Really, just great bands. Anyway, but he's like, Hilly is talking about doing a CBGB in Las Vegas. And I'm like, you know what? They should do a CBGB. Like, not make money off the bands. They should just turn it into a bar, almost like the Hard Rock of punk rock. Get people to donate memorabilia and people pay a cover charge just to go gawk at the stuff. That's half the time so you don't have to pay out the bands. You don't have to do this or that, the other thing. Like, people just want to go there and be in CBGBs. Like, reduce your overhead, increase your income. And, I thought that was a great idea, and now it's funny because I have like some marginal involvement with the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, just, I don't know, helping out with some stuff. But anyway, I just thought that was the proper use of CBGBs at that time. Live music was kind of winding down. You didn't have bands like the Super Suckers that could like sell out a 500-person venue, anymore. Like, it was just, you were either like mega, mega, mega huge, or you were really teeny tiny and unknown. There was almost no in between anymore. And
exactly.
So there was this guy writing a book about Green Day. And I don't know how he came to me. I'm not really sure.
Oh, cool.
But he's like, hey, well, you write something for the Green Day book. And so I'd been working on the CBGB thing, and it was really funny. The last night CBGB's was open, Green Day was playing the Meadowlands. And so I was trying to write this really thoughtful thing. Like, and honestly, I think none of us, and, I guess I can't speak for Green Day, or maybe I was just saying, hey, none of us in punk rock would be around without CBGBs. So it's just kind of ironic that, the day CBGBs is closing, Green Day is playing the Meadowlands. It's just like one of those things. And it certainly wasn't a slam on Green Day. Like, thank God, they're playing the Meadowlands better again than Maroon 5 or Coldplay or some shit. Nickelback, fuck, good. I'm glad they're making money. And I just remember like putting a lot of thought into this. Just, it was almost like saying like, it's the circle of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the
Totally
bands that meant a lot to me, like I ran away from home when I was 14 to see the Ramones, right? But there's some kid that, when I was 40 was 14 and Green Day is their Ramones, right? Green Day is their coming of age music, and your coming of age music means so much to you, right? And like I said, that's really important. I would never, ever, ever diminish that. Parents always need music to hate, like back in the day when people were like slamming on in Marilyn Manson, I'm like, they're like, he's like Kiss. Like when I was 12, we had Kiss, some 12-year-old has Marilyn Manson and people are like, they worship Satan, it's the same shit over and over and over again. Like, you don't want to listen to music that your parents like. That's not the point of it. That music isn't made for them, and it's not made for, it's not made for me, it's made for teenagers. So, and when this book got published, I don't even know what the wording is. The guy gave me a copy of the book, like, oh, here's a copy of the book. Like, it was some great thing, but he, like, the way he edited it, he made me look like a freaking asshole. And it was like, he took that part, like, oh, it's kind of ironic that the day that CBGB's is closing, like, Green Day's playing the Meadowlands. Like, I was fucking bitter about it or something, like, because I'm not, I just don't care. And the line after my quote was, nobody likes a quaint punk. And I was just like, fuck.
Oh,
no.
Anybody who knows
so out
me,
of context.
I am not that.
Did you ever hear anything back about that, Lindsay? Or like, did you read it and you're like, damn, this is really bad, but like, did it come back to you? Like, did you hear it?
there was some blowback. So I don't even know how this happened, but they were on some like late night talk show. And I wound up like in the backstage of that with their manager, whom I had met before, because, you know, I had kind of like dated their tour manager. And I was like, hey, yeah, I'm so and so. And he's like, oh, you're that person. And I'm like, fuck me, you know?
Fuck.
And it just felt like a giant bummer. I'm like, how do you explain you're not that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm an asshole.
I feel like I'm kind of annoyed that the person that did the book, you know, that kind of misquoted you. Like, you just wish they would have given you like, oh, hey, here's a draft. Like, do you want to like read it over and let me know? But it's like, it sounds like they just kind of ran and just concocted their own like.
Yeah. And afterwards, he acted like, you know, like we're friends. I'm like,
Oh,
wow, no, you made me look like a jerk. And now the band hates me. You know what I mean?
oh, that's terrible. We need to right this wrong.
Yeah, it really, really, really sucked, especially because one of my good friends, my former business partner, you know, who Abby knows, Jesse Malin, is really close with Billy Joe. And I just feel like, God, you know, I've been partitioned off to this other, you know, like, oh, it's that girl.
That's so unfair. That is so unfair.
That is.
Well, that's bullshit.
Yeah, it just sucks, you know. But what are you gonna do? It's not like,
I mean, at the same time, if someone's just gonna like assume that and believe it, you know, without even like, you know, I don't know, then it makes me think like, oh, well, fuck them.
It's almost ironic because you would think that like bands themselves are so used to being misquoted, you know, that there would be some kind of empathy there. Like, I don't know.
Did you ever get to like kind of like explain that?
you know what? There's some times where if you try to explain it, it would almost make it worse.
Yep.
You know what? Oh well, you know, it's blah. It's funny because at a point they were like the biggest band in the world, like bigger than U2, I think, you know, and they might still be.
I literally, I'm sorry to cut you off. I have ADHD, so before I forget, I literally
Go ahead.
I literally just whispered to Paul, like, I am her.
And I whispered back to Abby, I was thinking that.
Like, I can't.
Oh, speaking of New Zealand, Paul, oh my God, the Beths. Like, what the heck? They're so
The
freaking great.
Oh, the bits.
We love them so
They're
much.
so good.
Yes.
And Abby, I hadn't even heard of them. It was during the pandemic, I think. Abby was like...
I had been listening to them for a while, and then the pandemic happened, and you actually... I remember telling you, and you were just like, yeah, whatever.
He's like, there's no other New Zealand band except for Split Ends or Crowded House.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was like Abby put me onto that, and that, like, you know, we listened to that first album like during the pandemic, like while we were just like here, and it was they would do these live like YouTube, you know, live at home kind of things,
Concerts.
and so we would like tune in, and we're just like, you know, waiting in anticipation, you know, and it was like, it was so nice for me as well, because like just hearing them all talk and like the humor and everything, I'm like, oh, it's like kind of nice, you know, if you just feel a little like homesick or something. But oh my gosh, yeah, Lindsay, what did you think? It's like, we were just like, you know, when Abby put me onto them, I was just like, they're so good.
They're
I was like,
so good.
They're
And
so
I'm
good.
so excited. And I feel like when I saw them, like, again, like I feel like this band mommy let I'm like, oh my God. You know, but you see a band like the Beths or Red Key or, you know, and for me, I'm like, the kids are all right.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
or like the
Yeah.
Struts. I really like them. They've got you know, they've got this kind of like, you know, sassy attitude, you know, and it's funny because they cover Dancing in the Streets, which Van Halen did, and they kind of give me that like cheeky sort of Van Halen-ish, you know, kind of thing going on, you know, like glammy, like rock and roll boys with tight pants and cute haircuts, and I love it.
That's awesome.
So, you know, bring it. It's you know, and that's I guess, you know, where I feed this, like I feel like this matron, you know, of rock and roll, but I'm like, the kids are all right. Wow, it's cool, you know. I'm glad that there's, you know, people out there still doing it, and it hasn't just been like music by robots to sell soda pop.
That's totally it. What was actually really interesting with my old band, Goodnight Nurse, we were like a pop punk band in New Zealand. And so around the time we were starting was like 2001. Like we were so influenced by SoCal, you know, kind of punk bands.
How
and
could you not
and
be?
like you would go to like, I feel like you guys would laugh, but like you could go to a venue and it's the most Kiwi, like New Zealand, you know, guys or girls playing, but they're singing in American accents. So because it sounded so cool, like everyone just wanted to sound like Tom DeLonge. It was really interesting because at the time it really wasn't cool to sing with a New Zealand accent.
Wow.
But it's totally changed now. And when I heard the Beths, like when you hear them, they're totally singing with a full Kiwi accent.
But they also have that like New Zealand quirkiness too. They really like hone in on that.
I know.
love
Even
it.
when we did watch the live videos, they're like, you know, making like, hey, let's make some cups of tea and who wants a cup of tea? And then they had like snack cam and they had this camera which was just like focused on like the snacks and somebody was like dunking a biscuit cookie into a cup of tea. And I love all that stuff. You know, I was just like, oh my God, this is like New Zealand, like New Zealand kind of humor.
It's like New Zealand nerd rock.
But there's nothing, you know, better than that because it's just so raw, you know. And I heard them, I'm like, this is
it's authentic.
The kind of music I love, but they're original. They don't really sound, you know, derivative. It's not like, oh, Jesus, you sound like this or whatever. So this is my funny Beth's story. So my best friend, Emma, is from the UK. And we met in the UK. And it's like this long, convoluted story. But I was living in Sweden. My corporate headquarters, selling cigarettes, shoveling coal for Satan, was in London. So I used to have to go to London to do these things. And I was dating this guy from London. And there was some kind of like pub meetup or whatever. And she was there. And you know, you meet someone, and I really feel like this happened when I met Abby. It's like, oh my God, you're awesome. It's like, no, you're awesome. No, you're awesome. No, we're gonna be friends forever.
I was like, I barely know you, but I'm obsessed with you. Like,
and it's like, we're gonna be friends forever. And I'm going to take a bullet for you. So, you know, it's like one of these things. So I met this woman, Emma. You know, I keep forgetting because, you know, you're in the music world is, of course, very youth oriented. And again, I'm Forrest Gump, so I've been around forever. And so I keep forgetting. I think that the people that I like are all my age. But Emma's like 20 years younger than me, you know. I have a friend who's maybe 1 year older than me, and he's one of these encyclopedic knowledge of punk rock guys. It's like crazy, and he's English. His name is Martin, and he just astounds me because he's this guy like, oh, I went to this gig in 1977, and he could tell you the entire bill, like, oh, it was on a Tuesday, and you're just like, oh my God, you know, like, how do you remember this stuff? You know, I remember really useless crap, but you know, wow, this is like stuff I wish I could remember. But anyway, so Emma moved to Toronto, you know, for work and stuff, and she was like, oh my God, you have to hear this band. She sent me a link to the Beths. And I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly the kind of music we like. Holy crap, we gotta do this. And I think it was at that time or around that time I was going through cancer treatment, which is not to bring this down, like I'm alive, which is great. But that was pretty crazy. Like you go through like hardcore chemo, my hair fell out. And like at first, like I shaved like a mohawk because I knew my hair was going to fall out. And I'm like, I got this, man. I'm going to rock it. I'm cool. And then when your hair starts falling out in clumps, you're like, I have no control over this. This sucks. You know, like I was trying to like dominate it. And I just like fucking 3 months of that crap. And then I had to do chemo like once every 3 weeks. So my hair grew back. And, but I had to do chemo for a year. So I don't know why they didn't come to New York, but the Beths were playing Toronto, where Emma lived. And it was right around the time I was finished with chemo. So I was sort of like let off the chain, you know, like let off the IV. And so you're going to appreciate this, Abby. I had, of course, as you do, an end of chemo party. At Dream Baby, I brought my computer. I played like songs, and of course, everybody's buying me drinks. So when like everyone's there to see you buy you drinks, I was fucking fucked up. And I'm DJing, and I'm like, I really need to go home. Like the survival part of my brain is like, you're gonna die. You have to get your ass into a bed. So I literally I'm in the middle of a song and I just yanked the computer out of the sound system. Like nobody's gonna notice.
You're
This
like,
is
I'm done.
fine.
That's it. The night is over.
I get back to my
for
friend's
me.
place on the Upper West Side at 4:00 in the morning. There's this all-night pizza joint. I slam a couple pieces of pizza. I'm like, I'm gonna be good. I go to drive at 8
Awesome.
a.m.
Wait,
to
what-
Toronto, which is a 10-hour drive. And so
What?
I get in the car
Oh
and I'm
my-
like, fuck my life.
You're crazy.
And
That's
so,
crazy.
About halfway through, I'm like, I need something really greasy and stop at a Cracker Barrel. One of my friends said, every time I go to a Cracker Barrel, I feel like I'm in a KKK meeting. I'm like, it says cracker on the sign. It's advertised. It's cracker. Cracker Barrel is correct, but
Oh
not in
my
the way they
God.
mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had chicken
You're
fried
so
steak
funny.
with sausage gravy. It's a spectacular hangover for you.
That would've
Of
done the
course, all the
trick.
vegans are going to be like, "You're the devil." Yeah, I'm already shoveled in code for Satan. For what are it called? Tobacco companies. So anyway, so I drove up there and saw the bets, and there's the lead singer Lizzie, and she's in a t-shirt and jeans and no makeup, and she couldn't care less, and she's brilliant, and they're great. And then, so there's me in my pink leather jacket and my sequin pants with my friend Emma, who's wearing this fluffy coat.
Yes.
And she comes off stage and we mauled her. And she's like, what the hell is going on here? You're good, I love you. And she was just like, what the hell is happening here?
I would have loved to have seen that.
But also, I think we were really overbearing because we were so excited. And
So
I
I
think
could see her probably feeling a little overwhelmed by that.
our excitement was completely terrifying. So I don't blame her.
Oh my
That's amazing.
God. Wait, I actually did that once to Kathleen Hanna.
Oh my God. Who
was
won?
my hero. Yeah, I had met her a few times, but she did a DJ performance at the MoMA. And I went with my friend, and there was just I think we were 23. There was just free wine. It was this performance. She DJ'd and then a band played. I don't even remember it. Honestly, I was blacked out. But I got so drunk, and I never, the times I met Kathleen Hanna once at a signing, at Virgin Megastore or whatever. And she was so sweet and so nice. But I never realized how tiny she's short. And I'm 6 feet tall. So I'm falling over drunk. She's talking to people. And I'm like, excuse me, Kathleen, I just need to tell you, you are my hero. And I just... I just see her face. She looks frightened.
Oh no.
Who is this giant, drunk, loud woman? All up in my shit. And I just was like, I love you. You're just my hero. And then I kind of, she was just eyes a little wide. And she's like, oh, thanks. And then I just disappeared. My friend's don't ever do that again to anyone. That's such a, she's you definitely freaked her out a little bit, But
Yeah, you're rebel girl, I want to be your best friend.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny because I feel like we've all been in bands, and I feel like we've probably all experienced it on both sides.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I've definitely had. I had this lady who was at a gig. We were in back in New Zealand. I think I played, and then after the show, I was just walking around, and a couple of people would come up, and I mean, playing the bass. You're always grateful that somebody kind of recognizes you and says something.
Of course.
But this lady walked up to me, and she goes, you could when you just tell somebody is fucking nuts, and she looked at me, and she definitely had the crazy eyes, and
Crazy eyes
Crazy
killer.
eyes. Yeah.
crazy eyes killer. She fucking grabbed my balls. And she goes, you've got balls of steel, or something like that. And I was just like, okay, lady, okay, I'm off.
Wow.
Bye. You know what I mean? If that would have been a woman, the guy would have been arrested. But
That's
you kind of, I just played it off, and I was just like, okay, great, bye.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
I
certain
don't think I've ever-
well, the thing is this maybe harkens back to what I was saying before. I never want to be afraid to be a fan. I'm not too cool. Kind of goofy over somebody else's music.
Of course, yeah.
And, because it's exciting. And,
Yeah.
thank God, like, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like I have nothing but a cold, dead heart, or I'm so jaded because, I've been through all this stuff, but I know that I'm not, because, again, I can hear a song by the Beths and it sparks that thing where I'm like 14 again and I'm like mauling Lizzie and she's just like, oh my God, like security, you know, and especially like I feel you, Abby, because I'm a little bit shorter than you, but like I am not petite. Like,
Do you remember when we went to Rodeo Bar and saw Pete Best?
Oh my God.
And
we like bum rushed him and it was like, holy shit.
He loved it. But do you remember we were all like dancing in the front and all the old people were sitting down and they were like cursing at us out and like everyone was getting mad at us. But like Pete Best and his band were like loving it because we were probably the youngest people there.
Yeah, because we were younger girls up front dancing.
Yeah.
And everyone else was treating it like it was dinner theater.
I know. At Rodeo Bar.
I'm like, this is Pete Best and the Beatles. Like, it's funny because his bandmates, I think, were English.
Yeah. Yep.
But they live in Nashville.
Yep.
And, God bless them, So, yeah, I'm like, this is rock and roll. And for me, again,
it's fucking Pete Best, man.
Well, also for me, rock and roll and life in general, like everything I do is a full contact sport, right? I'm not a spectator. I'm not a watcher. I don't watch fucking TikTok, Of course, like when I'm having a crap fucking day and I'm like, oh, this sucks. I sit there and watch cat videos, like,
oh my God.
Because why not?
Why not?
Sometimes I'm alone, So yeah, of course I'm watching cat videos, but to me, it's the contact that makes it all worthwhile. It's like that. There are some times where, I take a chance and I feel like I'm jumping off a cliff. So, there's a band that does like the punk rock karaoke, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Stan Lee is a part of that, Stan Lee, the guitar player from the Dickies.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working with the Dickies for a long time, from like my Coney Island days and like dealing with their like, East Coast shows and stuff like that, because ultimately, I was a fan. I wasn't afraid to be a fan. Like, these guys need to be heard and they need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then Stan's doing this punk rock karaoke thing. And, we were in Vegas, they came to Denver, they came whatever. And I was like, hey, you want me to sing a song? And he would tell me what song to sing, right? Like those songs that the band wants to play, but like nobody picks or whatever, or he wants to play. Yeah. And I go out there and it's not like whatever, I think I'm hot shit. It's more like I get out there and I put my heart and soul and guts and every fiber of my being goes into singing that song because I don't want to be shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't be, especially like, for punk rock karaoke with a live band, and it's like this guy, Randy, who's in what's that band? Pennywise.
Oh, okay.
Then the guy on drums is from Goldfinger. And then it's like Greg Hetson I'm like Greg Hetson from Circle Jerks. I know he was probably in Bad Religion longer than he was in the Circle Jerks, but I'm like, oh, it's Greg Hetson from the Circle Jerks. And Stan, and I'm like, I can't suck, right? I can't.
Yeah.
Like, I got to go out there. And even my friend Emma was like, what the hell was that? What the hell did I just witness? And I'm like, I cannot fail because it's like you're there with this like top-notch band. You got this sold out crowd. I have my own band. I don't want people to be like, her band is shit, because I half-assed it. And of course, when I do like real karaoke, I sing the corniest songs on planet Earth because that's what karaoke's for, right? But punk rock karaoke is kind of a different thing. So like when I do karaoke, I'll sing like, the Harry Nilsson version of Without You, or Em and I will sing the Backstreet Boys I Want It That Way.
Oh my God, I'm dead. I love that.
Because, okay, like that kind of karaoke, you have to pick like a kind of a really like crap or sappy or ridiculous song because it's supposed to be fun, right?
Yeah, that's like, I feel like Sheryl Crow is my like go-to.
We have our go-tos.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate when people try to turn karaoke into American Idol. You know, it's like, fuck, you know?
It's like you go and then somebody never told anyone that they're like a professional singer, and then it's like,
Oh boy.
it's like,
It's fucking karaoke, man.
Just have fun.
yeah.
Wait, Lindsay, are they doing the like punk rock? What is it? Punk rock bowling that they do in Vegas?
Yes, and punk rock karaoke always plays punk rock bowling. So the last time, I can't say the last time because I actually did it in Denver. But you know, when they came through Denver, but when punk rock karaoke was in Vegas, it was a huge venue. It was sold out, and I was like, "What song do I sing?" And Stan was like, "Anarchy in the UK." And I was like, okay, I mean, I love that song.
That's my go-to.
That's
one of my go-to
Paul's
karaoke
go-tos.
songs.
Oh, really? Great. Yes. So I was like, I need to channel my inner Ron, right?
Yeah, you do.
You know, and especially, I mean, this may sound like shitty, but as a girl singing a punk rock song, everyone thinks you're going to suck. Or everyone thinks you're going to sing No Doubt, you know, or some shit. You know, the female fronted songs they have for punk rock karaoke are like Cherry Bomb and I'm Just a Girl. Like
They don't have any like muffs or anything like that?
Nope.
Aww.
Nope. And this is funny. So I recently found this out. So when the Dickies came through Denver with Black Flag, which was the Greg Ginn version of Black Flag, they had this amazing woman on tour with them called Dage. And he's like, you don't know Dage? So she was another one that when we met, we're like, oh my God, you're awesome. No, you're awesome. No, you're awesome. We're going to be friends forever. So me and Emma and a friend of mine, Laura, and her wife, Ashley, were all in for a cabin at John Waters summer camp. And if that blows your mind, it's as brilliant as you think it's going to be.
I feel like I saw your pictures from that and I was like, what is that?
It's John Waters summer camp, and it's freaking brilliant because they always have like my Facebook profile picture, you know, this is like me old ladies go on Facebook, is me and Johnny Knoxville, who's one of like the guest camp counselors this year.
What?
That's amazing.
This coming year, the like one of the celebrity guest camp counselors is Melanie Griffith. That's like a big deal. So
Wow.
anyway, yeah, it's like, holy crap, you know, she's like a proper movie star. So anyway, you know, we're doing this whole thing. And then Dage gets up on stage at John Waters Summer Camp and does Bikini Kills. Hello, Kathleen Hanna, Rebel Girl. And she says, punk rock karaoke, the band knows this, but it's not on their list. I was like, fuck that, right?
Yeah.
Like they should put it on the list. Take off Just a Girl as such a crap, stupid song. I was like, wow. She's like, no, you have to request it. And she went on like the punk rock cruise. I think, you know, that just happened. And there's like a videotape of her doing Rebel Girl with that band. And I'm like, okay, I'm totally doing Rebel Girl or something, you know, because
hell yeah.
With the punk rock karaoke bit, that punk rock karaoke band, I'm either doing Anarchy in the UK or I'm doing Dead Boys, Sonic Reducer, or something like that. Because, you know, the quote unquote girl songs they have are fucking lame. You know, I feel like it was the same thing with the Warped Tour. They had like the women's stage, you know, and it's over like this tiniest stage, and it's over in the corner, and it's over there, like, you know, back by the toilets or something.
That's what my old band played, but it was the Shearer Girl stage. It is now called.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and so we played. Joan Jett played, like Paramore played. This is before, obviously, Paramore was like huge.
Thank God.
But yeah, it was it started actually, they crashed the Warped Tour. That's how they like started
Wow.
getting in, and they would perform in the parking lot and somehow like weaseled their way in. And it's so funny because usually they had like this tiny shitty stage, and when oh god, I'm like, what year is it that my band played? I think it was like 2005.
Wow.
2005 something. And we got it, the like tiny stage that they had, the shit one, it broke down. So we got to play on the big ass stage. It was crazy. But yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's always like the shit little stage. Yep.
I always felt like the women in rock, oh, this is going to sound horrible, was like the Special Olympics of music.
Of
right?
course. Of course.
It's like, we're going to partition you off and we're going to stick you over there in the corner. Like, there's the women's stage. You go over and sit in the corner where you belong.
Yeah.
While the big boys play the main stage. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really shit. And I guess a lot of people didn't think of that way.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely like this rock and roll apartheid, where like, no, and people used to ask us like, do you want to play this women in rock show? And
oh god, I know.
maybe we did one or two, but they were lame because it was treated like this other than or subset or subsection or something.
But I feel like also people assumed it was going to be like acoustic Sheryl Crow type music.
Yeah, like it was the freaking Lilith
Fair. Yes, exactly.
Like, I'm thinking about Hedwig and the Angry Inch, where it's like the Menses Fair.
Yes, that's it. I feel like I did a few of those. Same thing. And it just, but people would be shocked. They're like, whoa, you're really good. And it's like, what the hell does that mean?
Well, it's really funny. Like, to hear you say that, Abby, is like really validating because, I guess, whatever. I started playing guitar when I was 10. Probably when I was like 11 or 12, I like bought Heart's Little Queen and memorized every single friggin' lead on that album.
That's
right?
Amazing.
And I stole my sister's Led Zeppelin songbook. I learned all those songs on guitar. I was probably a way better guitar player when I was 14.
Oh, so was I.
Now.
So was
because I sat there like, get home from school.
Nothing better to do,
my mom called me for dinner,
Yeah.
So, and it was funny because I was reading this interview with Ann Wilson, and she was saying that about Nancy was that, Nancy was always in her room noodling on her guitar. That was me.
Yeah. That was me. Yep.
So, who my parents were, like, here I am waxing the car to buy a record, Like, I wasn't treated like I was like this little girl. Like, I was expected to play sports. I was expected to be like physical, athletic, use tools, be competent, be self-sufficient. There was a lot of that. I was the kid with the lemonade stand. I was always out there like hustling.
That was like me and my brother. I grew up with an older brother, and I feel like same that he was very into sports. So I just got like pushed into it, even though I hated it. And I'm like the least, I'm not a coordinated person, like physically coordinated. I am not, me, Paul. I completely sober. I will just like injure myself really badly, trip over things. Like what, like.
Do you want some examples? I mean, like,
just like
ice skating, like falling over ice skating, or
no,
just
not
like falling
ice
over
skating.
a curb.
That's ice skating's the one thing. Roller skating. I broke my right elbow in 2018 at a roller skating.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's not.
And before Abby went, I was like, Abby, just like if they have like some kind of elbow pads or like knee pads or anything,
you said buy them on Amazon and bring them.
Oh, that's what I said.
It was like it was literally like a Madonna roller skating party in Brooklyn, and I was like, Paul, I'm not wearing knee pads and elbow pads
because I'm like this crazy safety conscious. And then Abby, we get a knock on the door, and Abby, like, I open the door, I'm like, hey, how's it going, how was it? And she's like, good. She's like, I hurt my elbow. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, I fell, and then you were telling me the story about someone like pushed past you or something, you lost your balance, and then like it was like maybe an hour later or something, and I think you'd had a few drinks, and then
didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I had one drink at the place, that's it.
And then like an hour later, you were like, no, it really hurts. Like, I think we have to go to the
I need
emergency
to go to
room.
the hospital.
And then we have this photo of Abby in the gurney or whatever,
They gave me a Vicodin for the pain because I was like dying.
Holy crap.
And so I'm doing
that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, I was given I'm like in a hospital bed. Like
a great photo.
Yeah, with like giving the rock and roll sign with my fingers, just like all like, out of it from the Vicodin. And they had just taken the x-rays. And yeah, but Paul was mad at me at first. He's like, I told you to buy the knee pads and elbow pads. You need the wrist guards. I was like, Paul,
Actually, for skating, whether it's roller skating or ice skating, the wrist guard is the most important.
There we go, Abby.
I know. I
Maybe
didn't
from
listen.
Lindsey.
Now you know, because I was a skater. So, I mean, like a roller skater, ice skater.
Wait, I used to figure skate when I was young.
Yes.
But I never wore wrist guards.
I see the same. But yeah, because when you go down, what's the first thing you do is you put out your hands.
Yeah,
your wrist
it's
bones are really
true.
delicate. The elbow is actually the hardest bone in the body. So if you take self-defense, or if you think about self-defense, and someone's like, give me your wallet, you're like, let me reach into my bag, reach into your bag, hold your elbow up, rake it across the bridge of their nose, you'll break it, they'll be in so much fucking pain.
Have you ever had to do that to someone?
Almost. I've punched a few people out. So again, being the Forrest Gump of rock and roll, I used to work at this nightclub called the Cat Club. And
wait, where was that?
It was on 13th Street between 4th and Broadway. And it opened in the fall, like September, maybe October of 1983.
Okay.
And that's when I started like uni down the street. So I was like, oh, good. I can get like a night job, make some money, do this and that and the other thing. But also, I mean, this is like 80s rock and roll. They had actually a flash dance style floor show. And the dance troupe leader for the Cat Club dancers was Perry Lister. I mean, who's just like amazing, spectacular unicorn of a human being. But she was famous, like she was English. So she was famous for being a part of the dance troupe Hot Gossip, which was like the English equivalent of the Solid Gold Dancers. So, and she was also Billy Idol's girlfriend. And she was like a backup singer for Visage and like Kid Creole and the Coconuts and all this kind of stuff, right? So
damn, what
she was like
she
an it girl. She was amazing on like this stupid cocktail waitress. It was totally like this 80s thing. I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar.
I'm dead.
100%. And in fact, one day, like Duran Duran came in, and I worked like the VIP section, so they were sitting in it was three guys. It was like Simon, Andy, and the drummer Roger. And so I was serving them all night. It was funny because I was like, hey, what do you guys want? And Simon says to me, surprise me. And I'm like, oh boy, what's this gonna be like? So I actually brought them stifters of Grand Marnier because I thought, oh, they're like sophisticated international guys, not realizing they were just like a bunch of blokes from Birmingham. But they were kept saying like, oh, bring me another surprise, bring another surprise. And then Simon's like, well, here's my information. And because at this time, this is 1984, Duran Duran was like bigger than the Beatles. They had like people wearing like 5 buttons with all like Duran Duran members. It was just insane. They were playing Madison Square Garden, which is funny because the year before I saw them at the Peppermint Lounge, which is a much different venue.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. He's like, well, come to my room and I'll give you tickets. Now, little does he know that my boyfriend at the time, his father invented online banking. Again, this is 1984.
Wow.
And so my boyfriend's father has a skybox at Madison Square Garden, like fully catered. Blah, 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 because he's like this big wig for this big Manhattan bank. And yeah, he invented online banking, which 3 people used, one of which was my boyfriend's father. But, so we already have this, but I'm thinking of my roommate who like wants to go. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have any tickets, whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take Simon up on his offer. And so I called the next day and I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, I want to come to your hotel and pick up those tickets. And he's like, well, you have to come before this time because that's when my girlfriend is coming. I'm like, oh, is that what this is about?
Oh,
I might have
God.
been 18, but I wasn't born yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. So I call up my boyfriend and I'm like, hey, John, because we had actually been listening to a lot of Duran Duran and his father traveled internationally. So we got all these Duran Duran records because his dad got them like at imports. You know, he would come back from England with all these records. Oh, and John had a Walkman, which nobody had at that time, just he had all the gear, Yeah. So his dad was like tech forward, here it is. Yeah. We met in 1982. We're still dating in like 1984. So I was like, you're coming with me to Simon's motel room. And they're staying at the Parker Meridian and it's fancy and we have to give a secret code to be allowed upstairs and yada yada because they're, again, bigger than the Beatles. So I get to the door, knock, 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 and I'm like, hello, it's, me, Lindsey. And he answers the door and he's got in one hand the doorknob and the other hand is holding a towel around his waist and that's all he's got on. And then he sees me and my boyfriend and he's like, be right back.
That's fucking
There he goes and puts on
amazing.
some clothes, comes right back. And then, of course, he's got this giant suite. So we go sit in like the living room part of the suite. He's got an Ovation guitar. John and I were actually really excited about it. And we start like, oh, can we play the guitar? We're like, start passing around playing music. So then Simon's looking at me like, holy crap. I thought you were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. And so it becomes this whole other thing. And it's funny because there was like a bottle of Jack Daniels on the table. He's like, yeah, I guess you're a rock star. They think you got to, give you a bottle of Jack Daniels. And we're sort of laughing about it. We're like, hey, we'll see you tonight. But I still didn't give away that John's father invented online banking. We have our own skybox in Madison Square Garden. So I let him give me the tickets so I can give them to my roommate.
Oh, different. Yeah.
And she can go to the gig, so like, we all go, whatever. And then of course, he gave us, after show passes for something in Madison Square Garden. So we're in some hospitality area. So I'm staying with my boyfriend and, Simon's there with his, tall, gorgeous model looking girlfriend who was a Canadian woman called Claire at the time. And, we're just sitting there talking and Simon comes running up to the both of us. He's like, what did you think of the show? And I'm like, what? I'm like, it was so surreal. From what we could hear between the girls screaming. So this was like the Beatles at Shea Stadium, 1964. Like the girls shrieking was like this white noise that's happening throughout the entire concert, And then over the period of a week, we kept getting invited to these Duran Duran parties, like at the Limelight, here, there, everywhere. It was so crazy.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God,
He must have liked you guys.
I guess, well, A, we weren't jerks. B, we weren't like these like punishers. You know what I mean? We were absolutely fans of their music. I probably punished Lizzie from the Beths more than I punished Simon Le Bon.
Simon Le Bon.
Dead. I grew up with, I was obsessed with Strokes when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah. They're freaking great.
They were playing everywhere. Arlene's, and me and my friends had fake IDs. We'd see like them with the yeah, yeah, yeahs. And we'd just take the train in and we'd meet them. And it's so fun. It's funny. I feel like before the internet was like as huge, your idols were so much more accessible. Have you noticed that?
Yes. And I would say it's for this reason, because the internet has no barriers, no filters. It's so easy to dox people.
Yeah.
And do all that. People have to be more careful nowadays.
Of course.
And when you would approach someone, I guess for lack of a better word, that was a, celebrity or something, or someone who was, performing or creating something that you really appreciated, you could just walk up to them and be like, hey, I appreciate what you do.
Yeah.
And now I feel like everything's like a threat. And I experienced a little bit of that myself. And Abby, you and I were talking before, this was recording about, me with my own band and like taking my foot off the gas. I was like, I am losing control of my life. Like I am losing, when people come up to you, they give you pictures. Oh, I made this picture of you. And it's got like inflated boobs.
I know.
So,
It's like a really warped version of you. You're like, what the fuck?
yeah. Is this how people see me? Or,
Yeah.
people like trying to weasel into my personal life and all this other stuff.
It makes perfect sense because I remember the day that I changed my Facebook to, instead of Abby White's, Abby Lauren, which is my middle name, because
Yeah.
our band was doing so much. We were getting like so much press. And I guess like creepy ass dudes would find me on Facebook and I get messages like, you have great legs, like just the creepiest stuff. And then it's like,
it's hard to take.
yeah, you don't want to be found. You know what I mean? You don't want. So it's interesting that you brought that up because it's like, you're right. Yeah. Like it makes sense that they're a lot less accessible, all this stuff, but I just remember being in high school, hanging out with the Strokes, hanging out with Julian Casablancas, Fabrizio. Like we all had fake IDs. We were fans of the band, but we weren't like, we would, and then we'd keep running into them. So it was great because we felt like a little like acquaintanceship. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it was so amazing. And I feel so grateful. Same with like the Muffs. I loved them so much. And the first time I saw them, I was 17. The first time I saw them, I was 17, and I was at Maxwell's in Hoboken, and I knew all the words. I was like singing along. And after the show, Kim came up to me and she's like, "You saved my ass." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You knew every word. I kept forgetting the words, so." I would just look at you and I'm like, it's so funny because then I became like, friendly with them. And whenever they were in town, like Kim found out I was underage and I had a fake ID with a girl named Stephanie. And then she'd fuck with me and just call me Stephanie. She would like call my mom. Like it was awesome. She was like a big sister. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I feel like these days, like that's not really a thing anymore. You know?
I wonder if it's because now, like, because of the internet and because of the reachability, like the numbers of people that must be reaching out to you that want something from you, like an autograph, or even I've read about those people that will stand in line and get people to sign, hey, can you sign this guitar? And you think it's going to be like, oh wow, someone wants this guitar, they're going to give it to their son or daughter, and then they sell it on eBay. Like people have a business just to get celebrity autographs, and then they sell it on eBay, and like I feel like the whole thing seems to have just gone crazy, like insane. And I could see why artists would then be like, you know what, we're just not going to sign anything because like I don't know.
Have you seen the video of Dave Grohl where there are like fans standing behind a barricade? I don't know if he did like a TV appearance or something. And he comes out and they're like, please, Dave, I'm a big fan. And he's like, listen, I don't sign anything anymore because people sell shit. And that's not what I stand for. Like, I don't, like I'm here for the fans, whatever. And they're like, oh, come on, Dave, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, all right. And then he just turns around and runs to his van. And everyone's like, what the fuck? It's so good. It is hilarious, but it's just like, and people are just ruthless now too.
It's not even like people are asking anymore. They're like demanding it. It's almost like they're saying like, you owe me this.
Yeah, there's like that entitlement now too, especially I've noticed with the younger generation. I don't know if you've noticed that, Lindsey.
Yeah.
Like just like this kind of entitlement in the sense of like, I can't say everyone.
It's like they never bought, they never had to buy the 49-cent albums.
That's it. They never had to wash
wash a car, wax the car,
do the laundry to earn the money.
Be out in the sun in the beating heat and beads of sweat, and I'm going to get that album and I'll go to the record store. And I feel like everything was like, you had to put a lot of effort. And when you did get that album, you were so grateful. God forbid you actually see the people in real life that were on the album you love. I would just be so starstruck. I mean, I could barely even get any words out. I wouldn't be thinking about, oh, can you sign this guitar so I could sell
I don't think I ever got an autograph from a celebrity I randomly ran into and met, unless it was like I purposely went to a signing.
I got Rod Stewart's autograph when I was like super young, and he was playing soccer. I knew who he was because Dad had given me the heads up that he was going to be playing at this field near us, and Dad was like, yeah, you could probably get an autograph if you just like be nice enough. And I don't know if I still have it, but I had it on this piece of like, do you remember those dot matrix printers with like cartridge paper that have the holes in the sides? It was like a piece of paper like that, kind of like fax machine paper looks like.
Okay.
And but I remember just having that, and I folded it up, and he was so nice to me. He was just like,
Aww.
he was like, hey, yeah, sure. And because he's a big soccer, football fan.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he was like, oh, do you play football? Do you play around here, or do you play at this field? And I didn't at the time. I can't even remember what I said. I probably just went with it and was
You
like,
lied.
yeah. I was like, I go to a different school. It's a few, streets away. But he was so nice. But I still remember exactly what I said. I was like, excuse me, Mr. Stewart, sorry to bother you, but could I please have your autograph? And I think he was probably just like, oh, what a, charming little cherub. I was probably, forget how, 7 or 8 or something. But I just remember him being so cool, and like, it was such a cool interaction. It was funny. And then years later, I would find out that on the last, when we talked to Brad, when we were talking about the Jeff Beck group, and when I went down the rabbit hole, and Rod Stewart was the singer in the Jeff Beck group, and he literally, it sounded, I mean, almost opened the door for like Robert Plant, like the way he sings, it's incredible. Like, I mean, Rod Stewart's done cool stuff, like a lot of cool stuff after that, but he's kind of done more of the adult contemporary stuff. But back then, he was just like so wild. I was like, fuck, I can't believe I got that guy's autograph. At the time, I was just thinking, Maggie May and everything.
Yeah.
Now I'm
Yeah. I mean, but like Rod Stewart's a big star. Robert Plant is a big star.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, Lindsay, I don't know if you know, but Paul's dad was actually a really big music journalist in New Zealand named Dylan Tate. And didn't he do stuff with the Sex Pistols?
He did, yeah. He was at the signing when they signed with was it EMI at Buckingham Palace? And he had like given the idea to like Malcolm McLaren. It was crazy. And, like, Dad still had photos of it. And but he did like interviews. He interviewed the Ramones when they came to New Zealand.
That's amazing.
And it was funny, Lindsay, when you're talking about the Dickies. I remember Dad telling me, I didn't go, but the Dickies toured New Zealand in like 2000 or something, and I remember him being like he could get tickets. For some reason I wasn't familiar with them, so I totally missed out. But
That's so crazy. You should see them because they're freaking brilliant.
I know. I feel like I want to go back. I was like 19, I was like, what was it wasn't that I didn't like them. I just hadn't, like I was a big Pennywise fan, and like I just didn't know them, and I was like, it was going to be outdoors, and looks like it was going to get pretty rough, like in the crowd. So I think I might have just taken a pass. But I should have gone. I should have gone.
Wait, Lindsay, who did you recently you were you driving the tour bus? But I came to see you. Oh my God, it wasn't that recent. It was before COVID. I believe it was like 2018.
That was probably the Dickies.
It was the Dickies, yeah, and they played
Yeah.
at it was a tiny place, and the place was packed. And you texted me, you're like, I'm here, I'll put you on the guest list, come out. And I was like, cool. And that was when Paul used to work for Saturday Night Live. So it was like a Saturday night, and I was by myself, and I'm like, yeah, I'll come out. And you were running around. I saw you for a little bit, but like the best part of that night was this couple tried to get me to have a threesome with them. What is that?
Oh, I know what it was.
It's very
It
small.
was Coney Island Baby, which is
Yes.
the former Brownies.
Yes. Coney Island Baby. That was it. Yep. And I remember so crowded. It was so
Yeah.
hot.
Crazy.
It was so crazy. And I was like trying to get a drink, and this girl was like standing next to me, and I'm like, oh, you can go in front and whatever, and just start talking. And then I met her and her friend, and I'm like, man, even for like, I was in my 30s, and I still am in my 30s, but I just like, I felt like so like naive. You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, how is this happening now? Like, what the fuck? And she knew. I was like, I'm married. She's like, so am I. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like happy. I'm happily met, like.
They're like, so are we.
No, she was with another guy that's not her husband. It was like,
What?
Wow.
Scandalous.
it was such a crazy situation. Yeah, it was something that totally would have happened to me in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like it used to happen all the time in my 20s. You go to like shows, everyone's drunk and being crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I feel like for that time, I was so like taken aback and shocked. I was just like, what is going on? Are these the vibes I'm giving off? Because I'm
Swinger vibes?
yeah, swinger vibes. Like, it was just so funny, but it was so much fun too, because I felt like at that point I hadn't been, it was like people were going
So
nuts,
funny.
you know, like it was the best. It was so fun. And then we went to, we recently saw Ben Queller at the old Highline Ballroom.
Oh, nice.
Racket now. And I remember I was literally telling Paul, I'm like, the last time I was here, I saw Lindsey playing with BB Buell.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's so crazy. So it's just, I feel like, and I was like, yeah, we're actually, and this was this not last Saturday, the one before, I was like, yeah, we're going to be, you know, Lindsey, who we're going to have on the show. Like she toured with BB Buell, and yeah, she once again was in town, was like, yo, come to see, you want to come to the show? I'll put you on the list. And I was like, cool. And I remember being there. I went by myself and it was just like so cool, such a cool, and I you know, huge fan of BB Buell and just like her whole history of everything. And or she wrote a book, right?
Actually, two now, but
Yeah, I read her first one. I haven't read the second one.
yeah, here's the amazing thing about Beeb. Like, you know, when I was talking about reading Cream magazine, like in the 70s, and like reading about Iggy before I ever heard his music, or the Sex Pistols, or lots of bands, you know? I probably started reading it probably between 73 and like 76, 78, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was like, you know, Kiss, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, blah, blah, blah. But Bee was always in there, like first with Todd Rundgren, you know, and then when she was kind of breaking out on her own,
Yep.
the music with like Elvis Costello and Rick Nielsen.
Yep. Yep.
So I was like, this woman is a boss, you know. I
Hell
was like
yeah. Hell yeah.
10, 12, 14. I was like, man, she is fucking ruling it. And it was just so funny later, you know, to cross paths through music. And, you know, one of the reasons we connected was, you know, we had mutual friends like Jesse Malin, but I was friends with a guy, you know, in college whom she wound up marrying, this guy, Jim Wallerstein, who was in a great band called Das Dom, and they were on SST Records. And yeah, so that's how those
That's
worlds collided.
funny. I was gonna ask, because I know, wasn't she also pretty good friends with Joey Ramone? You guys had some similar connections.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was some kind of gig that happened at Continental, and I took a picture, like sweetest picture of her and Joey together, and like
Aw.
got her arms around Joey's neck, and I was like, this is the king and queen of rock and roll.
Yes. That's insane.
That's amazing.
And I always felt like, you know, even when I was playing with BB, you know, like BB's dorky little sister.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's so funny because she's, you know, of course she's like a powerhouse, but one of the funnier things was, you know, of course she's like really maternal, you know, and she used to manage her daughter Liv's career, and you know,
I'm not gonna lie, I was looking for Liv at that show. She's I've always been just obsessed with her. I think she's the most beautiful woman.
so she has been in a couple of those shows, but the funny thing is the first BB show I saw, you know, was in like the basement of some joint. I think it was called like Tin Pan, I don't even know, on 14th Street. And you know, I think Liv was there. Liv was like a teenager, right?
Wow. That's wild.
So I feel like, you know, I grew up like Liv is like a sweet kid. I mean, whatever. She's like an extremely talented actress, you know, international, global superstar, all this stuff.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, she's a nice kid.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best.
And I'm not diminishing her, but she is a really great, you know, what you see is what you get. Like, she is really genuine. She's, you know, a good person. She's so sweet. So, you know, I kind of connected maybe with her and husband just because we were friends from college. And, you know, that's just kind of the way that went. And there was a birthday party. All of our birthdays in July. Me, BB, Liv, Debbie, Harry, we all have our birthdays in July, and there was a party at Don Hills, and you know, there was a cake for BB, and you know, Liv was there, and so I made kind of a joke because I was friends with both BB and, you know, they weren't married yet, but soon to be husband Jim
Mhm.
from college. Like, I met this guy in 1984.
It's just what a
And
small world.
Yeah.
I know, it's so teeny tiny. And I said to Liv, like, oh, I hope they don't break up because then they'll both hate my guts. And Liv is so sweet. She's like, don't say that. He loves my mom. And I'm like, oh shit.
Oh,
Like,
no.
I felt so bad because she's so guileless. Like she's
Yeah.
just this very genuine, trusting human being. And I'm like, oh, I'm fucking awful. And I ruined her life. So
I feel like that's something I would say.
you know, here's another thing. Like I learned a lot, from BB. She's a great, musician, band leader, whatever. She's just kind of got this intuitive sense of rock and roll. It's just like in her DNA, really. I've been super fortunate that either, with my band or with having the club or with just, being around the New York scene at the time I was, being able to be in the orbit of these amazingly talented people, fun people,
Lindsay, I ended up chatting with Jimmy Webb. Did you see him around at Trash and Vaudeville?
Yeah, so you have a business across the street, you're in Trash and Vaudeville all the time, you have all the same friends. Like Jimmy, was almost like this icon. If you boil it down, like he was a guy that worked in a shop, it is so not who he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he is so much bigger than that. He sold Joey Ramone his skinny laid trousers.
He did?
He was like the atelier for the entire rock and roll scene, and he too, as much as he was his own icon, you know what I mean? He was like Iggy Jr. He was also a rock and roll fan and never lost sight of that. It's such a trite expression to be like, oh, they're keeping it real, But Jimmy was that. Like he lived it. And he always had a smile on his face. He was always super friendly. I remember, and it's just like he was so special, and he really touched a lot of people's lives via Trash and Vaudeville, where I think it was 2017, D Generation was playing this big show at Irving Plaza. And there's a guy I know in the UK, and he was like huge D-Gen fan. And actually his wife was pregnant at the time. So he knew this was kind of like his last hurrah, before the baby came and before, he had these fatherly duties and stuff. So, I took him into Trash and Vaudeville, and he was looking at this bike racer jacket, the ones with the short collars. I forget they call them cafe racers.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know if I should do this because, of course, my wife's about to have a baby. I'm going to blow kids' uni fund jacket. And Jimmy came over, and he just totally he saw that he was a rocker. He was totally intuitive, gave him this friend discount on the jacket so he could kind of have his cake and eat it too. And I just appreciated that because he really saw that, he was helping this guy. He was doing God's work.
Yeah. He was so cool. I got to chat with him when we would go to I Need More.
Yes.
And I was always just like, oh man, I wonder if Jimmy's working today. He was just the nicest guy. I remember just talking to him and obviously he didn't know me from anyone, but he just had this way of talking to you, and there was just something about him. He just was such a sweetheart. And it's not like I'm buying really expensive stuff. I was probably trying on some t-shirts, and he's just running back and forth, yelling out to me in the dressing rooms, how's it going? Is it, do you want a different size? Or what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? And I just thought this guy was so awesome. And it's funny, we had a reunion show, this band I was talking about that I was in. Oh, that's right, because I remember talking to Jimmy Webb, and this is when I was working at Saturday Night Live, and he was telling me at the time, he was like, oh, he's like Saturday Night Live. He's like, I'd never been to 30 Rock before. And then he was telling me how Slash was on The Tonight Show or something, and Jimmy was in the green room. He was just telling me the building, he's such a beautiful building, and I was like, oh yeah, it's so cool. And I gave him a sticker of this band that I had here and did an EP. It was just so nice. He had this wall, this pillar, and he would put band stickers up. He's like, you know what? He's like, I'm putting it on the pillow. And then he just walked over, he slapped it on, and he was just so sweet. He's like, and you know what? I don't just do this for anybody. There's just something about you. And I was just like, oh, that was so nice. So he gave me the I Need More sticker. And it was so funny. He was like, maybe you can just slap it up in the bathroom in 30 Rock. And then, but he was really funny. Then he caught himself. He's like, oh no, wait, actually don't do that. You'll probably get in trouble. If you do that. But I put that on my bag. And then when we did our reunion gig, I wore like a sleeveless I Need More t-shirt. We hadn't played in like 16 years. So that was my little tribute to Jimmy.
And that's a great thing, like when you connect with someone like that. And that's the amazing thing about Jimmy is that he really connected with people. Like it wasn't just like, oh, gee, what do you want? You know, everyone felt like they were his best friend or something, you know?
Yeah.
It's just an amazing trait to have.
He was just always such a nice guy. I remember being in high school. You know, we would hang out on St. Mark's, go to the record stores on St. Mark's. There was one, I had a crush on the guy who worked there, and I was in high school. I thought it was so cool. I was like, what? Do you recommend any albums? And like, he's like, oh yeah, this new Supergrass one that came out is really good, Life on Other Planets. And I remember that I was in high school, and that actually, because I had a crush on him, I was like, okay, and I bought it. And I became obsessed with Supergrass. I was like, this band, and now I know like all their out, you know, and it's just like Jimmy Webb was always just like so sweet. And I feel like Trash and Vaudeville was usually pretty pricey. So I would go in there and just look like when I was in high school, you know what I mean? But he was always just so friendly and just like such a nice dude, like nice guy. You just see him walking around everywhere. Yeah. And he had such a presence. You know?
He just always looked the part. You'd be surprised if you suddenly saw him wearing like tracksuit pants and like a hoodie or something, you know? I don't know.
I don't think so. I can't imagine it.
No.
He was always just like punk rock perfection.
Lindsay, how did you guys end up opening for Iggy Pop?
I don't even know. That was like something we stumbled into.
Really?
But what was told to me was kind of horrible.
Oh, no.
You know, Iggy was playing Coney Island High. The band that was put forth to be the support act was a band called Psychotica, who was fronted by this very charismatic performer called Pat Briggs, who died within the last year, right? And his whole bit with Psychotica was almost like he was an alien and he came out of an egg and he was wearing like this silver bodysuit and he had this mohawk and it was just like this whole thing, right? Which was kind of incredible. And I don't know whether the Iggy people felt like this was too much trouble before he went on stage or they would upstage him or whatever. But Psychotica was dinged from that bill.
Oh, man.
Kind of at the last minute, like within, I don't know, 24 to 48 hours of the show happening. So I had a show booked in New Jersey and I got called up and they're like, will you open for Iggy? I'm like, yeah.
Of course.
But even weirder, so I told you with Killer Kowalski, you know, we had this drummer Doggy, we had this guitar player, this woman called Addie, we had Paul was on bass, you know, it was like we had this band put together and then that band fell apart, but the parts were remixed where I was on guitar, Paul was on guitar, we had this drummer Greg that we played with, and the new guy was coming in on bass. And the funny thing is the quote unquote new guy was Jack Steeples, who had been in the hardcore band Adrenaline OD with Paul, whom I had played with in these other iterations of the Kowalskis. And so I talked to Jack on the phone, right? And I mailed him a demo tape, you know, as you do. But the very first show with this band that played together that, you know, we made our first 7-inch, we made our record together, was this Iggy show. So we had never played together. And here we are opening for Iggy.
That's scary. Were you like bugging out?
Yes. So we get to the venue. I'm like, let's go to the dressing room. Let's run through the set. Iggy is sound checking. So all the dudes are upstairs. We're like, we're not going to. I'm like, let's go downstairs. They're shaking me off. No, this isn't happening. Jack's like, I know the songs. And I'm like, I'm going to die.
Oh, man.
It was one of these things where, you know, even like with punk rock karaoke and me, like, I feel like literally I'm taking a swan dive off a cliff. And I'm just like, vaya con Dios. And it turned out really, really, really well. You know, Jack is amazing. Actually, he's going to be at the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas in January giving tours. And he's just one of the most brilliant, funny, incredible human beings. He used to take the piss out of me on stage. And I would just let him because he was so funny. Like, why not?
Abby, that sounds like you and Chris Vasulo. You guys would always have this good.
He didn't have a mic, so it was all just me ripping on him.
Well, you were doing the ripping. I was just trying to like fucking survive. And, we're playing like another show. There's like 500 people. It's like sold out. There's a headliner. Nobody wants to fucking see us. And so I'm trying to like be entertaining and like, carry this whole thing or whatever. And Jack just steps up to the mic and starts telling jokes, like, of course, at my expense. And I'm just like, hey, as long as the crowd is still with me, I don't care, man. As long as they're not like, get the fuck off stage, But you have to like kind of roll with that stuff, whether it's, good or bad. Like, we were opening for the ska band and we're not fucking ska. And of course, there's like kids in their Fred Perry shirts and their jaunty caps, they're just waiting for the headliner and they don't give a shit about us either. And this one kid was just like heckling us, like, get off stage, we don't want the slackers, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I get it, whatever. And then finally, I'm like, how do I get this kid to shut up, but not look like one of those fucking assholes? Like, you see those videos of people like freaking going mental on the crowd and they just look like dicks. And I'm like, I'm not a dick, but like, I just fucking can't concentrate with this kid freaking heckling me. So I was just like, look, kid, your mom gives me $5 an hour to look after you. Do you want me to tell her what you're doing when she gets home?
Oh my God.
And there's like, this is a sold out crowd. The whole place just starts roaring. And I'm like, yes, I'm back,
Brilliant.
See, we do have one last question for you, and we always propose this question, but is there anything that you wanted to plug or anything like people could check out?
Well, I don't know if it's plugging so much. There's a couple of things. So people are always like, are you doing music? I'm trying to get on the Rebellion Festival in the UK. And I'm like, you can give me like the most shit slot ever. Like day one, like 8 a.m. I don't care, because I'm trying to get this like Kowalski's anniversary disc out and like anniversary of our first album. And it's like been 25 years. I mean, it sounds like kind of shocking, but get that out.
That's amazing.
Then also I've been working on a musical with Jed Davis, who was Arturo Vega's roommate, and Arturo wrote this play and Jed wrote all the music for it. And it's just been hard to like put it all together. So I've just been helping Jed put it together, for lack of a better term, like get certain parts cast, because then Arturo died of cancer. And if another shitty punk rock band rips off that Ramones logo, I'm just going to like beat a bitch. Like, stop using the Converse logo. Stop using the Ramones logo for your own crap band. No thanks.
I know.
So anyway, poor Arturo. Anyway, so that's actually up on Bandcamp. It's a play in 3 acts. It happens over 3 days. So day 1 and 2 are up. It's like I'll get a burst of energy, and like Jed will get a burst of energy, and like we'll really work on it and like kind of get it to where it needs to be. And then, everything falls apart. And then, of course, I like to keep my fingers in music. I have this show on this internet streaming radio. It's called gutsyradio.org. It's really great because it's very eclectic, and the DJs there are like super committed, and it's all volunteer. Like, there's no money involved,
That's awesome.
Just do it for the love of it.
It's love. It's the passion. I love that.
Yeah. And I do this every other Thursday. It's from 9 to 11 Eastern time, or 7 to 9 Mountain time, where I am.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It was so nice to talk to you.
This has been amazing.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you're doing this show. It's amazing.
Let's talk soon, girl.
Cool. Sounds great. Take care.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.